Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
The kingdom of Eldoria was a land of striking beauty, surrounded by lush green hills and cascading rivers. Its people, known for their resilience and unmatched loyalty, cherished peace above all. But this peace was now a fragile thing, hovering on the edge of collapse. In the vast war hall of the Eldorian castle, King Aldrich sat solemnly on his throne. Beside him, Queen Seraphine listened intently as General Orin outlined the dire news. The table before them held maps, scattered with markings of approaching armies and defensive positions, each stroke a reminder of the harsh reality closing in on them. "Our spies confirmed the reports," Orin said, voice laced with tension. "The combined forces of the marauders and mercenaries from the Iron Peaks march closer each day. They outnumber us nearly 10 to 1. Silence weighed on the room. Eldoria's defenses relied on a force many outside the kingdom mocked the tiny army. Skilled and swift, the soldiers of Eldoria were known for their small stature, a curious trait of their people that had long been the subject of jest among neighboring lands. Yet, despite their size, they were fierce fighters. Every one of them held a warrior spirit, though the odds they faced were daunting. The king's gaze traveled around the table, meeting each advisor's eyes in turn. "What word from our allies?" he asked. "Surely the kingdoms of Erenwood and Draken cannot ignore our plight." Orin's face grew grave. They see no gain in risking their soldiers for what they consider a lost cause. They believe that Eldoria's defenses are insufficient, that our army is too small to be a worthwhile ally. Queen Seraphine's hand tightened into a fist. "So, they will sit idle as Eldoria falls. They see us only as jesters in a court." A tense silence settled until a sudden, soft footstep echoed through the hall. The heavy doors opened, and a man entered, a tall, broad figure clad in a weathered cloak, his face shadowed beneath a hood. He moved with a quiet confidence that immediately drew the council's attention. As he approached, the man lowered his hood, revealing a face hardened by years of battle, his gaze sharp and intense. His name was Damon, a human warrior, known in legends but rarely seen in these lands. Humans, a species larger and stronger than Eldorians, had long been tales whispered among the kingdom's people, believed to possess almost mythical powers. King Aldrich studied him with a mix of skepticism and hope. "Who are you?" he asked, though the question carried a sense of knowing. "I am Damon," the warrior replied, his voice steady. "I've come to offer my sword and my strategy. I understand you face a formidable enemy, and I intend to help." The council exchanged glances, some smirking at the apparent audacity of this lone man. Even among the Eldorians, a single human, regardless of his reputation, could do little against an invading force of thousands. Orin scoffed, his skepticism palpable. "And what could you do alone against an army that far outnumbers us?" Damon's eyes held a glint of steely determination. "More than you think. You may call your warriors small, but size does not determine strength. I've fought in wars where the odds were worse. If you allow me, I'll lead your people and show them how to make even a tiny army a force to be feared." Despite the murmurs and the doubt that hung in the air, Queen Seraphine spoke up, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "Let him try. If he has traveled this far, he must know what he faces." King Aldrich nodded slowly, an almost reluctant spark of hope igniting within him. "Very well, Damon. If you believe you can help, then Eldoria's people are yours to lead. May the legends of your kind prove true." Damon gave a slight nod, his expression unreadable yet resolute. He looked out over the maps, seeing not defeat but potential. He would transform this tiny army into something far greater than even the greatest skeptic in Eldoria could imagine. The next morning, Damon stood on the training grounds, watching as Eldoria's tiny army assembled before him. Hundreds of soldiers, each one with a fire in their eyes, lined up in neat rows. They were shorter and slighter than he was accustomed to in his own people, but their expressions held a determination he found impressive. Damon stepped forward, his voice carrying a natural authority. "You may wonder why I'm here," he began, "and why your king has entrusted your lives to a stranger. I'll tell you. It's because I see in you something that others overlook. You are warriors, regardless of your size." Murmurs swept through the ranks. Some looked at him with admiration, others with skepticism. Among them was Alara, a fierce and graceful soldier who held herself with an air of quiet confidence. Her dark eyes, intense and piercing, met his own with a curious challenge. "We are ready to defend Eldoria," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "But what new tactic could you possibly teach us that we haven't tried before?" Damon smiled, impressed by her confidence. "The key to winning this war isn't brute force, it's strategy, discipline, and unity. We will not fight the enemy on their terms, but on ours. If they believe size matters, let's prove them wrong." The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances, but they listened, intrigued by his confidence. Damon's first command was simple yet unconventional. He divided the army into smaller units, each one specializing in different tactics: stealth, ambush, and speed. The tiny army had spent years mastering combat, but Damon's training focused on turning their size into an advantage. Over the next several days, he drilled them relentlessly. They learned to move as shadows, blending into the dense forests that surrounded the kingdom. Under his guidance, they practiced setting traps, launching surprise attacks, and disappearing before the enemy could retaliate. Damon himself fought alongside them, demonstrating each move and showing them that his confidence wasn't empty. Alara proved to be one of the fastest learners, her movements swift and fluid as she adapted to Damon's techniques. Their interactions became more frequent, the two of them often working late into the night, reviewing maps and plotting their next strategies. Their partnership grew into an unspoken bond, each of them respecting the other's strengths. One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Alara approached him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You could be fighting in any kingdom or leading any army. Why Eldoria?" Damon paused, his gaze drifting toward the distant mountains. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated," he replied. "In my homeland, we faced threats far greater than ourselves. People doubted us, mocked us, but we won because we believed in something bigger than ourselves. I see that same strength here in Eldoria." Alara nodded, her expression softening. "Then we won't disappoint you. The tiny army may be mocked, but we've never lost our spirit." As the days turned to weeks, the transformation in the army became undeniable. Soldiers who once moved individually now acted as a cohesive unit, responding to Damon's commands with precision and fluidity. The doubts and skepticism that once filled the training grounds began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet confidence. Then the fateful day arrived. A scout reported that the first wave of the enemy had crossed into Eldoria's borders. The invaders, confident in their numbers, were marching straight toward the capital, expecting little resistance. Damon gathered the tiny army, their faces grim but determined. "Today, we'll show them who we are," he declared. "Remember everything we've trained for. Strike hard, strike fast, and never give them a chance to regroup. We'll remind them that they made a mistake by underestimating Eldoria." Alara took her place beside him, her hand resting lightly on her weapon, a fierce light in her eyes. She glanced at Damon, giving him a nod of encouragement. "Lead us, Damon," she said. "We're ready." With a final nod, Damon raised his sword, signaling the tiny army to advance. They melted into the shadows of the forest, moving with the silent precision he had taught them. As they approached the enemy's camp, Damon felt the rush of battle in his veins, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The ambush was swift and merciless. Damon led his unit with an unyielding resolve, his voice clear and commanding as they executed their plan. Alara fought beside him, her movements fluid and fierce, and together they tore through the first line of enemy soldiers with a precision that stunned their foes. The enemy, caught off guard and disoriented, scrambled to regroup, but Damon's strategy was flawless. Before the enemy could understand what had happened, the tiny army had already vanished back into the shadows, leaving nothing but fear and confusion in their wake. As they regrouped at the edge of the forest, Damon glanced at his soldiers, pride swelling within him. They had done it. For the first time, the tiny army had struck fear into the hearts of those who had laughed at them. And as they returned to the kingdom, Damon felt Alara's gaze on him, a quiet gratitude mixed with admiration. Though no words were spoken, he knew they had taken their first step toward victory. News of the tiny army's ambush spread swiftly through the ranks of the invading forces. The soldiers, once arrogant and dismissive of Eldoria's defenders, now whispered of shadow warriors who struck without warning and vanished like phantoms. Panic brewed in their ranks, their confidence shaken by the tales of their comrades who hadn't returned. Back in Eldoria, Damon and Alara stood with King Aldrich and Queen Seraphine in the war room, reviewing maps and discussing their next moves. General Oren, once a vocal skeptic of Damon's abilities, now regarded him with newfound respect. That ambush, it was beyond anything I expected, Oren admitted, tracing his fingers along the enemy's marked positions. They'll be forced to rethink their strategy. They'll take us seriously now. Damon nodded. Yes, and that's exactly what we want. Now, they're reacting to us, which means we control the field. He looked to Alara, a plan already forming. But we'll need to be even more unpredictable. Alara, I want you to lead a small squad to disrupt their supply lines. Alara's face lit with determination, but she masked it with a calm nod. Consider it done, Commander. As they dispersed, Damon caught up with Alara at the barracks, watching as she selected her team. She glanced at him with a half-smile. You really trust me with this? I wouldn't have chosen you if I didn't, Damon replied. He hesitated, then added, Besides, you're the best I've seen here. Just be careful. She raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in her eyes. Careful, Damon. That doesn't sound like something you'd teach. Her voice softened, the moment turning serious. But thank you. I'll make sure this mission succeeds. As she led her squad into the shadows, Damon felt a pang of worry that caught him by surprise. In the days they'd spent training together, their bond had grown beyond that of commander and soldier. She was fierce, independent, and had a way of challenging him that he found refreshing. Yet he knew he couldn't let emotions cloud his judgment. She was more than capable, and he had a kingdom to protect. That night, as he prepared the next stages of their strategy, he found his thoughts drifting back to her. The battlefield was no place for personal connections, yet the quiet moments they shared were beginning to mean something more than he'd intended. Alara and her squad returned just before dawn, their mission an undeniable success. They'd severed critical supply lines, crippling the enemy's resources. Despite exhaustion, Alara's energy seemed boundless, her eyes bright with pride as she reported to Damon. They never saw us coming, she said, a touch of satisfaction in her voice. By the time they realized, half their supplies were already lost to the river. Damon grinned, pride warming him. That was well done. You've not only weakened their numbers, but their morale. As the kingdom celebrated the success, Damon found himself alone with Alara, the atmosphere charged with the aftermath of victory. She leaned against the wall, observing him thoughtfully. You know, she began, her voice quiet, I never expected you to be so invested in Eldoria. Most outsiders see us as curiosities, warriors to be humored rather than respected. He met her gaze, a sincere expression on his face. Eldoria deserves respect. You've proven that again and again. And it isn't just the kingdom I've come to admire. Ilara's breath hitched slightly, a blush coloring her cheeks. For a moment, the weight of the war lifted, leaving just the two of them standing in the silence of the night. Their hands brushed, a simple touch that spoke volumes. But before either could say more, a guard interrupted, breathless and alarmed. Commander Damon, Ilara, scouts report the enemy is moving. There's an attempt to encircle the capital. Duty pulled them back to reality, and they nodded, the moment between them fading as urgency took precedence. Back in the war room, the council gathered, tension thick in the air. Damon addressed the group, his voice commanding and steady. They're desperate, he explained, pointing to the map. They're attempting a full encirclement of the capital, but they're overextending. They're betting everything on cutting off our retreat. King Aldrich's face hardened. If we break through their lines, they'll be forced to regroup. Exactly, Damon confirmed. This is our opportunity to end this siege once and for all. We'll split into 3 units. Elara, I want you to take a contingent to the west. Cut off their reinforcements. Elara nodded, her determination matching Damon's. He gave her a reassuring glance, silently willing her to stay safe. With the strategy set, the tiny army prepared for what would be their most crucial battle yet. Damon knew that Eldoria's fate hinged on this fight, and as he took his position on the battlefield, he felt the weight of that responsibility. Yet, amidst the chaos and the battle plans, his mind lingered on Elara, her strength, her courage, and the promise that awaited if they survived. The dawn broke, casting a pale light over Eldoria's walls as Damon and the tiny army prepared for the oncoming assault. From his vantage point, Damon could see the full extent of the enemy's forces, their ranks stretching to the horizon, a seemingly endless tide of steel and fury. This was a decisive move, an all-or-nothing gambit by an invader desperate to conquer Eldoria. Damon's voice carried through the ranks as he addressed his soldiers. Today, we face an enemy who believes they can defeat us because of our size. They think they can crush us with sheer numbers, but we've already shown them that they're wrong. He paused, letting his gaze sweep over the determined faces before him. You've trained hard, you've fought well, and today, we defend not just our kingdom but our honor. A resounding cheer rose from the tiny army, their voices fierce and unwavering. Beside him, Elara stood with her unit, her armor glinting in the morning light. She met his gaze, a determined smile on her face. "Let's show them what Eldoria is made of," she said, her voice filled with pride. With a nod, Damon turned to lead his unit to their designated positions. He would fight in the eastern flank, while Elara took her squad to intercept reinforcements coming from the west. As they parted, Damon felt a pang of worry. This was the most dangerous maneuver they'd attempted, and he knew the risks were high. But Elara's courage had never wavered, and he trusted her with his life. The battle began with a thunderous clash as the enemy forces surged forward, confident in their numbers. But the tiny army, using the tactics Damon had drilled into them, struck from all angles, attacking with speed and precision. They weaved through the enemy lines, disappearing into the shadows before re-emerging to strike again. The invaders, accustomed to conventional warfare, struggled to keep up with the tiny army's elusive maneuvers. Damon fought at the forefront, his sword a blur as he cut through wave after wave of enemy soldiers. Despite the grueling pace, he maintained a watchful eye, rallying his troops and guiding them with steady commands. His battle cries inspired those around him, his presence a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. On the western flank, Elara and her squad executed their part of the plan flawlessly. Using the cover of the forest, they launched a surprise attack on the enemy reinforcements, catching them off guard. Elara moved with lethal grace, her spear a flash of steel as she led her warriors. The invaders, unprepared for the ferocity of the attack, faltered under the relentless assault. The two fronts pushed the enemy to the breaking point. Damon's unit shattered the eastern line, while Elara's squad decimated the reinforcements. The enemy forces began to lose their cohesion, confusion spreading as they realized they were outmaneuvered. Yet, in the midst of their success, disaster struck. A fresh wave of enemy soldiers, hidden reserves, charged from the north, aiming to flank Damon's unit. Caught off guard, the tiny army struggled to regroup. Damon shouted orders, trying to hold the line, but the sudden assault threatened to overwhelm them. Just then, Elara appeared with her squad, her arrival a timely intervention. She threw herself into the fray, her spear striking down enemies with fierce determination. Fighting side by side with Damon, they rallied the soldiers, their combined strength turning the tide once more. Their movements were synchronized, an unspoken connection guiding them as they defended their ground. At one point, Damon found himself cornered, an enemy soldier's blade poised to strike. But before the blow could land, Elara intervened, her spear intercepting the attack. She flashed him a grin, her expression fierce and confident. "Can't let you have all the glory, Commander," she teased, her tone light even in the heat of battle. Damon smirked, his gratitude unspoken but clear. "I'll return the favor, don't worry." Together, they fought with an intensity that inspired those around them. Their bond, forged in training and tested in battle, seemed to strengthen with each passing moment. Damon felt a surge of pride and admiration for Alara, her strength and spirit matching his own. After hours of relentless fighting, the enemy's lines finally broke. Realizing they could not match the tiny army's resilience, the invaders began to retreat, their morale shattered. Cheers erupted from the Eldorian soldiers as they watched their foes flee, victory settling over the battlefield. Exhausted but triumphant, Damon surveyed the battlefield, his heart pounding with the thrill of victory. He glanced over at Alara, who stood amidst her warriors, breathing heavily but wearing a satisfied smile. She caught his gaze, and for a moment, the chaos of the battlefield faded, leaving only the unspoken bond between them. As the soldiers began to regroup and tend to the wounded, Damon walked over to Alara, a mixture of relief and admiration in his eyes. "You fought well," he said, his voice soft yet sincere. Alara shrugged, though her eyes sparkled. "You're not too bad yourself, Commander." A silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Then, as if the intensity of the moment had loosened his guard, Damon reached out, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. Alara's eyes softened, a blush warming her cheeks as she leaned into his touch, her gaze searching his. Before either could speak, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted them. King Aldrich and Queen Seraphine had arrived, accompanied by General Oren and several advisors. They wore expressions of profound gratitude, the weight of their victory evident in their eyes. "Commander Damon," King Aldrich began, his voice thick with emotion, "you have not only defended Eldoria, but given our people a new legend to honor. The tiny army will no longer be mocked, thanks to you." Damon bowed, humility in his posture. "It was an honor, Your Majesty. Your people have courage that few others possess." The Queen stepped forward, her eyes warm as she glanced between Damon and Alara. "We owe you both a debt that can never be repaid. Eldoria is forever grateful." The council departed, leaving Damon and Alara alone once more. She looked at him, a quiet smile on her face, and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "We did it," she whispered, her voice filled with pride and relief. Damon returned the smile, a warmth spreading through him as he held her gaze. "Yes, we did. Together." As they walked from the battlefield side by side, Damon felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come to Eldoria as an outsider, yet now he felt as though he belonged, and with Alara by his side, the future seemed brighter than he had ever imagined. The day after their victory, the kingdom of Eldoria erupted in celebration. Streets that had been silent in anticipation of battle now rang with laughter and cheers, filled with grateful citizens and proud soldiers. Damon and Alara, their roles in the battle now the stuff of legend, found themselves at the center of the festivities. The king held a grand feast in their honor, where nobles, counselors, and soldiers alike raised their goblets to toast the heroes. But while the kingdom rejoiced, Damon found himself seeking a quiet corner away from the attention, his thoughts drifting as he watched the stars above the castle's towers. He didn't have to wait long before Alara joined him. She approached silently, her steps soft on the stone as she took a place beside him. They stood in comfortable silence, gazing out over the kingdom they had fought so hard to protect. "Not enjoying the celebration?" she asked, a soft smile on her lips. Damon shrugged, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "I've never been one for crowds. Besides, it feels surreal. We fought so hard, and now it's over." Alara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Eldoria will never forget what you did for us. The people already speak of you as a hero." Damon looked at her, his voice sincere. "The tiny army was the real hero. You and your warriors fought with a strength and bravery that few could match. I was just lucky to be part of it." Alara chuckled, a quiet, knowing sound. "You're too humble, Damon. Without you, we wouldn't have had a chance." She reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. The touch, gentle yet deliberate, sent a spark through him, and he felt his heart quicken. For so long, he had kept himself guarded, focused on the battle and the strategy. But now, with victory behind them, he allowed himself to truly see her, not just as a warrior, but as someone who had become precious to him. "Ilara," he began, his voice a low murmur. "I never expected to find something like this here. I came to Eldoria to help, but I didn't realize how much this place, and you, would mean to me." She held his gaze, her dark eyes softening as she took a step closer. "You mean a lot to me too, Damon. More than I ever thought possible." They stood, inches apart, the air between them charged with unspoken words. And then, as if drawn by an invisible force, Damon leaned in, his hand resting gently on her cheek as their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and fierce, a culmination of the tension and connection that had grown between them. When they finally pulled back, Ilara's cheeks were flushed, a shy yet pleased smile curving her lips. She rested her head on his shoulder, and they stood together, watching the stars as the kingdoms celebrated below them. Over the next few days, Damon and Ilara's bond grew stronger, their connection deepening as they spent time together, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams of the future. They were no longer just allies, but something more, a partnership forged not just by battle, but by trust and understanding. One afternoon, as they strolled through the palace gardens, Ilara's hand slipped into his, a natural gesture that brought a smile to Damon's face. "Now that the battle's over," she began, her voice contemplative, "what will you do next? Will you stay in Eldoria?" Damon considered her question, a mix of emotions stirring within him. "I came here to help, and that's what I did. But now," he glanced at her, his gaze warm, "now, I'm not sure I want to leave." Her smile was soft, her hand tightening around his. "Then stay. Eldoria has plenty of room for a human warrior. And, well, I'd hate to see you go." Damon felt a surge of warmth, her words confirming what he'd hoped to hear. "Then I'll stay," he replied, his voice firm. "Eldoria has become my home, and you're the reason I want to be here." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of King Aldrich and Queen Seraphine, who approached with smiles that held a mixture of gratitude and admiration. They invited Damon and Ilara to join them for a private council, where they shared the kingdom's plans to fortify their borders and establish stronger alliances. King Aldrich turned to Damon, his expression serious. "We would be honored if you would stay in Eldoria, Commander Damon. Your strength and knowledge are invaluable, and we would be proud to count you as one of our own." Damon bowed respectfully, his heart swelling with both pride and gratitude. "It would be my honor, Your Majesty." The Queen glanced between Damon and Ilara, her smile touched with warmth. "And perhaps, with time, you'll consider making Eldoria more than just a place to serve. The people speak highly of your bravery, and your presence brings a newfound hope." The implication was clear, and both Damon and Ilara exchanged glances, a faint blush rising to Ilara's cheeks. With a respectful nod, they excused themselves from the council, leaving the king and queen with quiet smiles of their own. Later that evening, as they walked through the quiet corridors of the castle, Ilara leaned into Damon, her voice a soft murmur. "It seems even the king and queen are rooting for us." Damon chuckled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Then we'd better not disappoint them." They walked in silence, the quiet companionship bringing a sense of peace that neither had felt in a long time. For the first time, the future felt not just promising but full of possibility. In the days that followed, Damon took on the role of a permanent commander, working closely with Ilara to strengthen Eldoria's defenses and train new recruits. Their bond, now openly acknowledged, became a source of inspiration for the kingdom, a symbol of unity between human and Eldorian, proof that strength came in many forms. And so, as the kingdom flourished and peace settled over the land, Damon and Ilara found their place, not just as warriors but as partners, their love a beacon that would be remembered in Eldoria's tales for generations to come.